Let's unpack the chronic debate lies peddled by Kamala Harris and, of course, endorsed by the woke network Liberals over at ABC News, starting with the incorrect fact-checking of Donald Trump over late-term abortions.
But her vice presidential pick says abortion in the 9th month is absolutely fine. He also says execution after birth. It's execution, no longer abortion, because the baby is born, is okay. And that's not okay with me.
There is no state in this country where it is legal to kill a baby after it's born. Madam Vice President, I want to get your response to President Trump.
Well, according to former Virginia Governor Ralph Northam, third trimester abortions and post-birth procedures happen in that state.
When we talk about third trimester abortions, these are done with the consent of obviously the mother, with the consent of the physicians, more than one physician, by the way. And it's done in cases where there may be severe deformities, there may be a fetus that's non-viable. So in this particular example, if a mother is in labor, I can tell you exactly what would happen. The infant would be delivered. The infant would be kept comfortable. The infant would be resuscitated if that's what the mother and the family desired. And then a discussion would ensue between the physicians and the mothers.
And in 2019, Kamala Harris voted against a motion to give protections to babies born alive after failed abortions. Not only that, but according to the National Review, Tim Walz signed legislation that guaranteed an unqualified right to abortion up until the moment of birth and even gutted protections for children born alive after abortion. Joining me now is Sky News contributor Kosha Gada. Kosha, thank you so much for joining us. Look, ABC News spent a lot of time fact-checking Trump during the presidential debate, but according to this evidence, the moderators made a lot of mistakes, particularly when it comes to the issue of late-term abortions. And this is a key line that Kamala is peddling out to win over women. But why is it so important that this gets corrected?
Yes, they fact-checked Trump, I think, 8 times and never fact-checked her even once, including on this issue, which is a key issue for the female vote. It's actually the only issue where Democrats do have a little bit of a structural advantage after Roe v. Wade. There's a lot of heated momentum around this issue, and there have been some legislation on bills in different states, including quite ruby red states, that are seeing that the public has moved and is a little bit to the left of where even those deep Republican states are. So she's got the momentum on this one issue and definitely wants to play that. However, as you very correctly showed here, the left is actually very much outside of the mainstream of where most Americans are. They are generally pro-choice for up to the first trimester or thereabouts, more or less, but not until the moment of birth. And that's kind of the point that Trump was trying to make. The moderator interjected herself and took it very literally about killing the baby, the words that he used. But as you pointed out, it's not about that. It's about giving life-saving care in situations where the abortion was not successful and the baby actually is born alive. So she sort of helped Kamala Harris whitewash that. And I think that, the reason for it with this whole debate is that they are not in the business of fleshing out where the candidates actually stand on these issues, but it's about narrative shaping and narrative engineering. And from that perspective, the moderators did their job.
I've got to say, one of the big issues that was raised was about Charlottesville, because Kamala Harris invoked that Charlottesville riot accusation. Have a listen to this.
Let's remember Charlottesville, where there was a mob of people carrying tiki torches, spewing anti-Semitic hate. And what did the president then at the time say? There were fine people on each side.
But this is what Donald Trump actually said at the time.
And you had some very bad people in that group, but you also had people that were very fine people on both sides. You had people in that group, you had people, and I'm not talking about the neo-Nazis and the white nationalists, because they should be condemned totally. But you had many people in that group other than neo-Nazis and white nationalists, okay?
Kosha, it's very important to fact-check this, because the Charlottesville comment was debunked a long time ago. Trump did not call neo-Nazis fine people, as he's just explained there. Why are the Democrats continuing with this line, though?
It feels a little bit like they're looking in the rearview mirror of what some of the strategies and tactics were in past cycles, both of the last two cycles, that you could argue were a little bit successful against Trump, at least in 2020. But to your point, this story is so old, nobody cares about it really anymore. Not that what happened that day wasn't something that people care about, but in terms of how it relates to why they're making their choice for who they want to vote for in this current election. And it has been debunked, including by very left-leaning or left-friendly outlets like Snopes. That's one that people point to. President Trump didn't do himself any favors in how he rebutted that in the debate, because he pointed to people like Laura Ingraham and Sean Hannity as those who debunked it. He should have pointed to Snopes. But leaving that where it may, aside from that, many people have debunked this, and I think they keep doing it because it fits into, again, that narrative engineering of casting him as this bigoted, horrible person who thinks that there are fine people on the other side. And I think they're going to continue to run with that in the 60 days that we have left.
Yeah, I mean, it's a long time to go to keep peddling the same lines, isn't it? But look, Kamala also repeated this bloodbath hoax and claimed that Trump said that there will be a bloodbath if he's not elected. This was her at the debate.
And be clear on that point. Donald Trump, the candidate, has said in this election there will be a bloodbath if this and the outcome of this election is not to his liking.
But if she'd actually listened to the full clip, it shows that Donald Trump was referring, in fact, to the auto industry.
China now is building a couple of massive plants where they're going to build the cars in Mexico and they think that they're going to sell those cars into the United States with no tax at the border. Let me tell you something to China. You think you're going to get that? You're going to not hire Americans and you're going to sell the cars to us? No. We're going to put a 100% tariff on every single car that comes across the line, and you're not going to be able to sell those cars. If I get elected, now if I don't get elected, it's going to be a bloodbath.
Kosha, I think it's really important to make the distinction here. Kamala is basically implying violence, but as Donald Trump's tried to explain, he says he was talking about the Democrats destroying the auto industry. That's two very different scenarios.
Completely different. So this day and age that we live in of constant 24/7 news and things get chopped up and clipped and you can just take one sentence out of context and circulate it. The good news is that it cuts both ways. So while in that debate those things went unchecked, the fact of the matter is about 65 million people viewed that debate. The vast majority of them are decided. There are very few undecided voters left who haven't heard these things, maybe. So, okay, it did play a role with them. But for everybody else in the aftermath, in the days and weeks that followed, this kind of stuff will get checked and corrected on X, on programs like this one, on various other outlets in the independent media sphere, primarily. And I do think at the end of the day, when it washes through, that line of attack about who Trump is just doesn't land anymore. Everybody knows who he is from a character perspective, and it's really going to come down to the things that matter to people, the economy, inflation, immigration, et cetera. And I think all of this is going to wash through.
Yeah, look, I think that's an absolute fair comment. But this one blew my mind, though. This was a very stark contrast in comments. There was a comment made at the debate by Kamala Harris about Donald Trump's plans for IVF treatment for families. This is what she said.
And understand what has been happening under Donald Trump's abortion bans. Couples who pray and dream of having a family are being denied IVF treatments.
Now, that just does not quite sound like what Donald Trump has actually previously announced about IVF. This is what he said.
Under the Trump administration, your government will pay for, or your insurance company will be mandated to pay for, all costs associated with IVF treatment, fertilization for women, IVF treatment. Because we want more babies, to put it very nicely.
So, Kosha, we've got a situation where Donald Trump's actually announced free IVF treatment for women. So where on earth is Kamala Harris getting this claim that he's denying couples IVF treatment from?
Yeah, that one was probably one of the more egregious things that sort of just seems to have been made up out of thin air. You know, I think where it comes to is back to that point around abortion and more broadly reproductive rights is how they frame it, because they're very good at kind of the linguistic games and reframing things. That's an issue where broadly, Democrats are a little bit ahead in the polls with the women, especially in swing state votes. And so what they try to do is conflate anything under that umbrella term of reproductive rights. It could be abortion, it could be IVF, it could be anything in between. And they're trying to say for all of that stuff, the Republican Party and Trump are against you and against your reproductive rights. I think he is on to that, and that's why he announced that program about government-funded IVF, which, by the way, many people in the Republican Party didn't like because of the fiscal conservatives. They're like, well, how are you going to pay for that? How are you going to execute it? He even got some criticism from his own side for it. But the reason he did that is to try and create that fracturing under this notion of reproductive rights. And it's very different when you talk about IVF and being pro-fertility and pro-birth, which he and the Republican Party typically is. It's very different from do you stand for late-term abortion in the 9th month? And he's trying to separate that. She's trying to conflate it all together. And it's going to be up to the voters to cut through that noise and figure out where both candidates stand.
Well, I mean, it's just such stark differences in the comments made. It's extraordinary. Now, I've got to talk to you about Project 2025. The Democrats seem to be obsessed with talking about it. They're constantly peddling out these theories and claims about it. This was Kamala Harris's take.
What you're going to hear tonight is a detailed and dangerous plan called Project 2025 that the former president intends on implementing if he were elected again.
And this is the reality which was actually reported by the left-leaning CNN.
Trump did not write Project 2025. The project's big policy document published by the Heritage Foundation think tank lists dozens of people as authors, editors, contributors. Donald Trump is not among them.
Yeah, there you go. Even the liberal media say it. But even the former director of Project 2025 says Trump had nothing to do with it.
Trump has nothing to do with Project 2025. Sure, a lot of us have worked in the admin and came together, but this started long before he even announced for president.
Kosha, why are the Democrats desperately trying to link Trump to Project 2025? It's constant. We've been hearing this now for months. This is one of their key attack lines. Why?
You know, I think back to that narrative shaping and engineering, it feels like something ominous, like Project 2025. I've had people refer to it as Manifesto 2025, things like that. It's some sort of thing that could be evil, I think. Also, it's really wonky because nobody's going to sit there and read a 900-page document, which is what it is, most people who are living their lives. So it's easy to sort of just create innuendo and suggest that it's some really radical agenda, and if you vote for him, he's going to implement that agenda and it's a threat to democracy. So all these sort of high-level platitudes, hoping that that message trickles down and scares the few people that are still undecided to not vote for Trump. I think that's the strategy, as opposed to articulating what your own strategy is. That's something that we have not seen a lot of from that side. And it's going to be really amazing to see how this election turns out despite that, because you've got just narrative engineering versus actual policies. That's really what this election is coming down to. And it's quite scary when you think about it in those terms.
Yeah, it certainly is. Look, let's talk now about fracking. We've got to go here because Kamala Harris, her flip-flopping on this matter is enough to give you whiplash. Here she was at the debate.
I will not ban fracking. I have not banned fracking as Vice President of the United States. And in fact, I was the tie-breaking vote on the Inflation Reduction Act, which opened new leases for fracking.
And let's cue that infamous 2019 tape.
Will you commit to implementing a federal ban on fracking your first day in office, adding the United States to the list of countries who have banned this devastating practice?
There's no question I'm in favor of banning fracking. So, yeah.
Kosha, it's tying her up in knots, this fracking issue. It's another word salad by Kamala Harris. But the problem is as well that ABC News failed to pick her up on that. She has changed her mind so many times, but where was ABC News?
Yes, for their goal of propping her up and giving her a boost, they did exactly what they should have done and fulfill their duty, because their goal is not to check her on that. But the fracking one is so egregious because there are actual direct sound bites, like you just played, of her saying one thing and now saying another. And that's fine. People evolve their positions. She's allowed to evolve her position if it were true. And the way to get to that, because very few people believe that it is true, is to probe her a little bit more about why did you change your mind? You know, did you see some new information that led you to do that? Is there something that you came across that led you to believe your thinking was wrong before? Nobody's done that. Dana Bash sort of did a little bit in the CNN interview. But this one I don't think is working with what she's doing, because this goes straight to Pennsylvania, which is on the critical path for her especially. Pennsylvania runs through every path to victory for her based on how she's polling. She knows that. And I just don't know that the coal miners and the people that are directly affected from this in Pennsylvania are buying that her change of heart is genuine. Remains to be seen, but she clearly knows that she has to say what she's saying now, and she's going to keep doing it for the next 60 days, notwithstanding the many video clips of her out there saying the opposite in the past.
Yet the many word salad clips that are doing the rounds. I want to talk to you about performance polling. According to a CNN poll, 63% of voters believe Kamala Harris turned in a better performance. Prior to the debate, the same voters were actually evenly split on which candidate would do better. So it was 50% Harris and 50% Trump. Whereas Dials monitoring, the reaction of a Fox News focus group during the debate, showed that independent voters overlapping with Republicans in support of Trump's immigration policies in particular. It says the focus group comprised 7 Democrats, 5 independents and 5 Republicans, and was represented by blue, yellow and red lines respectively. When Trump spoke of the rising crime at the hands of illegal immigrants, the yellow line monitoring the independent reaction rose drastically in Trump's favour, overlapping with the red Republican line. That in itself is very telling. Kosha, how do you read this result?
You know, I would caution everybody to take these focus groups with a grain of salt, just because they're a snapshot in a moment of time. They're anecdotal. They're not statistically significant. So, you know, taking it in context. That said, this seems to be what's emerging, and we'll see it in the next week when those anecdotes can actually turn into data, that there seems to be a bit of a paradox here, where from a performance perspective, I think it is widely regarded that Kamala did better. A lot of Trump supporters that I know were quite disappointed, actually, with him, because he can be on message. We've seen him do that, and he wasn't yesterday. But it's not translating through into how people see her. Did she earn more trust from those undecideds? Did she actually change anybody's mind of someone who was on the fence voting for her? You're not seeing that in this focus group. And if that holds through, I think it's a reflection of, okay, maybe she was more polished and she put on a good performance and met the bar that was for her, where she didn't completely fall over. She did better, but she's not actually, it wasn't a knockout blow where she's winning hearts and minds. And it also, I think, is a reflection of just the irrelevance increasingly of these debates on mainstream media and news outlets, where nobody cares or trusts, you know, what the outcome was or what the respective performances were if it doesn't translate to their votes, which is ultimately all that matters.
Yeah, that's a really fair point. Kosha Gada, appreciate your time. Thank you so much for joining us this evening.